Welcome to a KE Report webinar produced in conjunction with Focus Communications. I'm your host, Corey Fleck, also your host over at the KE Report, where we cover the market moves as well as touch base with a lot of resource companies, including the company that I'm featuring here today, Labrador Gold, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol LAB and on the OTCQX under the symbol NKOSF, also on the Frankfurt Exchange under the symbol 2N6. I am joined by the President and CEO, Roger Moss. Now, Roger will be taking us through a broad exploration update from the Kingsway project in Newfoundland, where the company is approaching more of the final stages of the 100,000-meter drill program. Throughout this webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask questions. Please use the chat function within this webinar software, either the chat or the Q&A area, where I will go through those questions, save them up, and interject on certain slides with Roger, and also save up some questions for the end of this webinar. So, everybody, thank you for joining us. I hope you all enjoy this webinar. Roger, thank you for taking time to walk us through this exploration update. I'll leave the floor to you.
Thanks very much, Corey, and thanks for hosting this webinar. And thanks to all of you for tuning in and listening to the update. I think for some of you it will be an update, but for others it may be the first time you're listening to this. So we'll have a bit of an introduction, and then we'll get into some of the more recent results that we've put out and discuss those. Of course, with any kind of presentation like this, there are forward-looking statements that I'll be making, and while we expect those statements to be accurate, they may not always work out as we expect. So please bear that in mind. And yeah, this is just a bit of background for those of you that may be new to the story. Our Kingsway project is located on the island of Newfoundland, and in what's become sort of the Gander Gold Camp in central Newfoundland. We really like working in Newfoundland. It's politically stable, and it's a very supportive jurisdiction in terms of mineral exploration and mining. In fact, the Newfoundland government came out last year and said that they would like to see 5 new mines developed by 2030. So that's a very positive endorsement of of how the government sees the mineral exploration and mining community in Newfoundland and Labrador. In terms of our team, very experienced people. Our project manager especially has been working in this area of Newfoundland since 1990, when Noranda started the initial search for gold mineralization in and around Gander. And of course, shareholders are very important, and we have some very, very good, supportive major shareholders that I'll discuss in a moment. Corey mentioned that we're getting towards the end of our 100,000-meter planned drill program at Kingsway, and I think we have about 17,000 meters left of the drill program, and we are still in a very good cash position with 11.5 million approximately, and so that drilling program is more than adequately covered by our cash on hand. This is what the share structure looks like, and the share price. If you've been following it, you'll know that it's been bouncing around between about 18 cents, 22 cents. Closed yesterday at 19, which puts us at a market cap of just over 30 million, and that's with issued and outstanding shares of 170 million. A few options there, so just under 180 million fully diluted. I alluded to the cash, and these are some of our larger shareholders. Eric Sprott remains our largest shareholder with 10.7% of the company, and some of the others are Palisades Gold Corp, Newfound Gold, who you may be familiar with. It's a neighbor of ours down to the south, and Crestcat Capital, who are a fund from the U.S. based in Denver. This is just a quick look at the land position, and you can see here in blue is our land in the Gander district, surrounded by claims of Newfound Gold in the mustard yellow, and also by Exploits Discovery in the mauve color there. Our licenses cover approximately 77 square kilometers. And the most important thing to understand, looking at this diagram and about the Kingsway property in general, is the dashed black line that runs through the center here, the Appleton Fault Zone. For those of you familiar with Newfound Gold and have followed our story, perhaps, you'll see this Appleton Fault Zone mentioned a lot. And the reason for that is that almost all the gold occurrences occurring in this part of central Newfoundland are associated in some way with that fault zone. And that's true of the discoveries that Newfound Gold have made down to the south. It's also true of the discovery that Exploits has made on their Bullseye property. And it's certainly true, as you'll see, of the occurrences that we've discovered at Kingsway. So that is something to keep in mind, that Appleton Fault Zone seems to be an integral part of the distribution of gold mineralization in this area.
Roger, are there any significance to those other fault lines that are in that map?
There are. I mean, they're also major crustal structures. And I know, for example, that Newfound Gold has done quite a bit of work along the JBP fault and have found gold occurrences along there. I'm not as familiar with gold occurrences along the Dog Bay line. Certainly, we haven't done a lot of work along that fault zone. And from what I can tell, based on our work and work of others in the area, it's the Appleton Fault Zone that continues to be the major focus of exploration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is kind of a busy slide, so I'm not going to go through every aspect of it, but it's hard to believe that we've been working here at Kingsway for 3 years. We actually started our field work in August of 2020, after we picked up the property here in March of 2020. So it's been 3 years, and for those of you that's been following us, you'll know that at some times it's been a pretty wild ride. But overall, I think we've done a pretty good job of exploring and finding gold at Kingsway. And you'll see some of the highlights there. Again, I'm not going to go through them. We'll talk about some of them, specifically Pristine and Dropkick and Knobby later in this presentation. But I think we've done a pretty good job of advancing Kingsway over the last 3 years. And this is the slide I think that sums it up. When we arrived at Kingsway, there was very little gold occurrences known. There were two, the Cracker gold occurrence in the north, which actually isn't shown on here, and neither is the Appleton number 2. And we haven't really managed to find either of those gold occurrences. So we started from scratch pretty much, and having done our basic grassroots exploration, we developed drill targets, we drilled them, and we found gold in 5 out of the 6. And those 5 are highlighted here from south to north: Golden Glove, Big Vein, Pristine, Midway, and Dropkick. So it's a pretty good discovery rate, if you like. And all of the gold occurrences that we found along the Appleton Fault Zone, Golden Glove, Big Vein, Pristine, and Dropkick, have had visible gold associated with them, and in some cases spectacular grades, like we see at Big Vein particularly, which was our first discovery back in 2020. And that our drilling there has extended that mineralization over about 720 meters at strike length at Big Vein. So here's a slightly different look at it with a bird's nest of structures, or interpreted structures, at least in the fine black lines. Again, you can see Golden Glove down in the south, Big Vein, Pristine, and Dropkick, and those are the four occurrences that occur close to the Appleton Fault Zone, and they are the ones that we focused on. Midway occurs probably about 1.5 kilometers to the west of the Appleton Fault Zone, and so it's not directly associated with the Appleton Fault Zone. In fact, it may be more associated with the Dog Bay line, which is one of those other major structures that we were talking about earlier, and it's also a very different style of gold mineralization. It's not hosted by sedimentary rocks, in particular black shales and sandstones and siltstones that we see along the Appleton Fault Zone. Midway is hosted by gabbro, so it's quite a different system, perhaps, certainly different host rock, and it's something that we haven't really followed up after the initial discovery. We've preferred to focus our attention along the Appleton Fault Zone, where we seem to be having more success.
So will you be going back to Midway at all, Roger?
Not in the near future. I mean, the Midway, as I said, it's hosted. The gold mineralization there is hosted by gabbro. It's and instead of seeing sort of coarse-grained visible gold like we do along the Appleton Fault Zone, the gold is disseminated within that host rock, and we do think that there's a lot more potential for this kind of mineralization on Kingsway and elsewhere in central Newfoundland. There's certainly a lot of gabbro and a lot of gabbro-hosted gold occurrences in this area, but we still have so much to look at along the Appleton Fault Zone, and in this particular case, between Golden Glove and Dropkick, there's 7.5 kilometers. And of that 7.5 kilometers, we probably only drilled about 2.5. So there's large areas that are still underexplored, especially by drilling along the Appleton Fault Zone. And I'll get into that a little bit more in a bit.
Okay, thank you. So still focus very much Appleton Fault Zone.
Yeah, I think, when you're having success, that's where you want to keep going. And, looking to the south, we know that Newfoundland are also having success along the Appleton Fault Zone and splays off it. And so there's really no reason to jump around somewhere else while we still have a lot more to explore of the Appleton Fault Zone.
Yeah.
So, Pristine was interesting, and as it says here, we actually found Pristine by following up on some gold grains in till samples. We did some RAB drilling, followed up by diamond drilling back in I think it was early last year, 2022, and the grades that we got were kind of like they were decent, sort of 2 grams, 3 grams over some not insignificant widths, but they weren't as exciting as what we were seeing at Big Vein, where we were getting in some cases 100+ grams over half a meter to a meter at Big Vein. And so we kind of decided we were going to put this on the shelf for a little bit. We went back to Big Vein and focused on expanding that. But all the time, in the back of our minds, we were thinking, well, there's got to be more at Pristine, and maybe we just didn't drill it correctly. And so when we went back this year, we tried a different. We were looking at a different model, and that was basically that the veins or the vein zones at Pristine may be more flat lying than dipping as we had expected initially. And I think that's one of the reasons why we had this really nice intersection that we announced a few weeks ago, where we had almost 12 grams a ton over 6 meters, and that included higher grade intervals of 30.6 over 2, and there was, I think it was 88 over about half a meter. So that was the first really high grade intersection outside of Big Vein. So coming back to Pristine seemed to be a good idea, and you can see that intersection here in the middle of the screen. And there is certainly more to be looked at, both to the southwest and to the northeast. So that's something that we're in the process of following up on right now. And the other thing about Pristine is that all the mineralization that we've drilled there to date has been relatively shallow. It's been less than 86 meters vertical, so and extends over about 160 meters, and it's still open. And one of the things that we'll get to in a minute is how we're going to try and expand that strike length even more.
Roger, will you be able to put some estimated true widths on some of these veins coming up, especially at Pristine?
It's kind of tough at the moment. We don't have enough drill holes in some cases to accurately understand the orientation of the veins. So right now we don't have a good handle on the true width. The actual veins vary from perpendicular to subparallel to the drill core. So they are in all kinds of different directions. So there's a lot of structural analysis that needs to be done in order to work out the true width.
Okay, thanks.
This is just a photo of that high grade interval at Pristine that we announced a while back. It contains 77 grains of visible gold, which I think is the highest number of visible gold grains that we've seen in our drill core to date, even including the core from Big Vein. So that was nice. That was nice to see, and it just it's one of the things that I keep saying is that when you're drilling these kinds of targets, you can't really give up when you don't have an immediate hit. And it's something that we learned at Big Vein. I think it was the 14th drill hole that we actually saw the visible gold in the drill core at first. And because when we were drilling back in early 2021, the labs were so slow in their turnaround, we didn't have the benefit of gold values to direct the drilling. So visible gold was obviously a key indicator, and we also used some of the XRF data, especially arsenic and antimony, to try and help guide the drilling. But yeah, it's been if you can drill 14 holes without seeing what you're hoping to find, then you've got to have some determination to stick to it. Of course, at some point you've got to call it quits, but I think you've got to give it a good go, especially in these kinds of systems that we're drilling here. So this is what I was alluding to earlier. We're Pristine. So Pristine is up in the north on this diagram, and Big Vein about 600 meters to the south, or southwest. And the area in between we've just called the gap because it is a gap. And we do have a permit in there to close that gap, and a permit application. And so we have about 40 holes planned to in between Big Vein and Pristine, and that's going to essentially be stepping out along the structures that we know. You can see one that's trending up towards Pristine from Big Vein. So we are following these structures out along strike, and also the cross-cutting structures that you see there in the red are other structures that we will be targeting as we move up between Big Vein. We're probably going to be moving up from Big Vein to north from Big Vein and south from Pristine simultaneously. So we'll have two drills narrowing that gap once we get started there. Knobby is really early stage. We put out a news release, I think it was last week, and normally we wouldn't put out a news release on some grab samples from a vein, but this one is significant because it's the first indication that we have of gold in outcrop between Big Vein and Golden Glove. And you can see it here about halfway between Big Vein and Golden Glove. And the Knobby vein was found by prospecting along the Appleton Fault, and follow-up work has now traced that over 200 meters along strike to the west. And what's also interesting about this particular occurrence is that it has a very different orientation to what we've seen elsewhere along the Appleton Fault on Kingsway. And as you can sort of see here and notice at the larger scale maps of Big Vein and Pristine, those orientations tend to be subparallel to stratigraphy going to the northeast and southwest, whereas Knobby is more of an east-west strike of those veins, at least as far as we've seen so far. So that's something different. It may be related to a splay off the Appleton Fault Zone. And we know, for example, that Newfoundland Gold has had a lot of success drilling these splays that are coming off the Appleton Fault Zone. And so it's early days, but this is something that we're pretty excited about to follow up of this occurrence.
Now, are you drilling there now? Will you be drilling there soon?
No, we're not drilling there now. And again, this area between Golden Glove and Big Vein, we have a permit application in to be drilling down there. And so we expect to get some feedback on that application in early September. So hopefully we'll be able to be drilling there later in September. It's certainly part of the plan to drill down there in our remaining meters that we have for the 100,000 that we planned.
Okay, thank you.
This is just some photos of the Knobby vein outcrops, and the one on the left there is almost reminiscent of Big Vein because it's just a massive quartz vein standing up out of the forest floor. And for those of you that have been following us for a while, you'll remember that that was very similar to what we saw at Big Vein. And so hopefully we'll get some results that are similar to Big Vein, and the early results have been encouraging. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where we have that application for a permit submitted. That application has 95 drill holes along that 3-kilometer section between Golden Glove and Big Vein, with Knobby being right in the middle and our obvious first target. This map here shows a number of samples, really, of gold mineralization in different sample media. We have the rocks in the triangles, soil samples in the circles, and till samples in the diamonds. So what you'll notice is that between Big Vein and Golden Glove, there's not a lot of samples, and that's not because we haven't been down there. It's more because we haven't. There's not a lot of outcrop down there, and the type of the type of cover that we see there is not conducive to soil sampling or till sampling, in that we believe that it's not very locally derived. It's derived from further away, and so if we were to take soil samples, for example, or even till samples, we probably wouldn't be able to use that to follow up the results and get decent results out of it. So that drilling down there is mostly going to be focused on testing geophysical targets, and obviously Knobby is going to be a priority because that's already shown. We know where the vein is, we know which way it's striking, dipping, and we have some results out of it already. But for the most part, it's going to be a lot of geophysical targeting down in that area.
Have you already done the geophysical work?
Yeah, we have. So late last year, we did an airborne magnetic and EM survey over the entire property. And earlier this year, actually just this summer, we did ground magnetic and VLF follow-up between Golden Glove and Big Vein. So that work has just been completed, and we're in the process of reviewing that data to help us focus our drilling.
So then eventually you just need to get the drill on it then, hey? If you can only do so much surface work, comes down to drill.
Exactly. I mean, it's going to be it's going to be interesting targeting, and but we know we're in the right place. We know that we have a very good idea of what kind of structures to look for, and so that's really going to be the key, is using the geophysics to target specific structures that we think may be conducive to hosting gold mineralization.
Okay. All near surface as well?
Well, down there we don't really know. Obviously, Knobby is at surface, as is Golden Glove. So it could be near surface, but we don't really have a very good idea of how deep that overburden is down there.
Okay, thanks.
And then finally, I just wanted to touch on the Dropkick Discovery. Again, this was a grassroots discovery that we made earlier this year. It's about 3.5 kilometers north of Big Vein, so which would put it, I guess 2.8 kilometers north of Pristine. So it's way out there, and that's another big gap that we have in our coverage of drilling. So it was a blind discovery, again, made by following up, in this case, gold in soils, and initially by RAB drilling, where we had some good quartz veining that graded a gram over 14 meters, and then following up that with diamond drilling, we intersected gold in all 4 of our initial holes, and subsequent holes have also come in with some decent gold mineralization, which is great. I mean, you can see some of the highlights there, just under 2 grams over 9 meters, that included 32 grams over half a meter. And again, that's a high grade that we see away from Big Vein. And this is one of the things that we're trying to, like, can we find consistent high grades elsewhere other than at Big Vein? Because we, as you know, we focus on Big Vein so much, and can we find that style of mineralization elsewhere? And I think we're coming around to being able to do that. Obviously, we've got a long ways to go at Pristine and Dropkick to get to the same stage that we're at Big Vein. So, but yeah, I think so far so good. The only one of the 4 along the Appleton Fault Zone that hasn't really proved up as far as our initial expectations was Golden Glove, and that one's still a bit of a mystery. We haven't committed much more down in that area because, as I mentioned, we've got so much to do in the gaps between Pristine and Big Vein and Golden Glove, that's gonna at least take us over the next 17,000 meters that we're gonna drill to 100,000 meters. So we've got our hands full for sure. This is just a diagram showing some of that, and where we have been and will be looking at more. Obviously, the gap between Pristine, Golden Glove, Pristine, Big Vein, Golden Glove. They're the focus of the remaining drilling, and both of those areas are awaiting permits. So that's the drilling will continue as we get those permits in, and yeah, I think it's both areas are exciting, and obviously as we go down towards Golden Glove from Big Vein, we're getting closer down to the boundary and trying to follow the Upland Fault up through from the boundary up towards Big Vein. So we're excited about the potential down there.
So just a quick question on that Dropkick. Will you be drilling any more Dropkick, or the focus is going to be a bit more to the south then and those gap zones?
We haven't planned any more drilling at Dropkick yet. We're still waiting for the final results to come in from the drilling that we did do. So the drills moved off of Dropkick. Our expectation is that we will be drilling more in the gaps, sort of that we have, and because really we have a sense of what's there at Dropkick, but we need to focus more on the underexplored areas, especially between Big Vein and Pristine, which is a 600 meter gap, and we know we have good gold mineralization in both those areas, but obviously, of course, drilling down towards the southern boundary and Golden Glove, especially now with something like with Knobby in the middle, that's a compelling target that I think we have to test.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that's it. The takeaways here are 17,000 meters, fully funded with the cash that we have in the bank, and we've got a lot of drilling planned, and so far we've actually done pretty well with our drilling. And as I mentioned, five of the 6 targets that we generated had gold mineralization in them, and the finding of Knobby shows that prospecting and mapping, we can continue to find new targets along the Upland Fault, and by following up some of the earlier work that we've done. And I think that's an ongoing process that we're continually updating, looking at our historical data in the context of what we've found recently, and refining targets and refining our drilling. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good rest of the year, and hopefully we'll have some more success.
All right. Well, Roger, thank you for walking us through that. Let's get into a few more of the questions that have come in. We're going to start back at that gap zone, because that does seem to be such a big focus there. Are there any surface indications of precious metals, of gold in that gap zone?
There are. We have so with the gap zone, so the gap zone between Pristine and Big Vein, I think is what you're talking about, and that's what we call the gap. We haven't really come up with a name for the other gap between Big Vein and Golden Glove, but between Pristine and Big Vein, we have it's covered with soil sampling. So we do have soil anomalies, gold and soil anomalies through there, and we also have very good geophysical coverage, both from the airborne that I mentioned earlier, and also from ground geophysics that we did in 2020, I think it was 2020, 2021. So we've got very good coverage through there. Again, there's not a lot of outcrop in that gap, so we will be targeting mostly on the geochemistry and on the geophysics. One of the things that we are puzzled by in that area is we found Pristine by drilling, following up results of pristine gold grains in till samples, hence the name. And I think that was an area where we had 166 pristine gold grains in the till sample. And just to the northwest of there's another sample there that had 311 gold grains, of which something like 260 were pristine. And we haven't found the source of that yet. So that's another target in that gap area that we would like to flesh out a little bit and possibly drill, because that's actually the highest number of pristine grains we've found on the property, and we haven't found the source yet.
Now, to drill this gap zone, you're right, in between Big Vein and Pristine, could you just drill a couple fences? Would that make it easier to get an understanding of what's possible there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a good way to go about it. And then we will be stepping out in both directions. But yeah, doing some fences across the structure may well be how we end up tackling it. But I think that as long as we have the as long as we have the targets basically to justify that, then absolutely we could certainly do that.
Okay. Now it does sound like you're still waiting on the permits, right? So how long do you think the permits could take?
Well, there are two permits. The one between Big Vein and Pristine will likely be earlier. I don't think we've followed up recently on the status of that one. But I would hope, what are we now? We're just sort of coming up towards the end. I would hope that it would be sometime in September that we would have that. And the second one, as I mentioned, sort of mid-September, we should get some feedback on what we're looking at with that one, because it is quite a bit bigger program. And hopefully we'll be able to get that pretty soon after we get the permit for the gap.
Okay. Are there any access issues in either of these gap areas that could hinder drilling at all when you can get a drill on the ground?
No, not really. The property generally is very well covered by forestry roads. And part of our permit applications include the construction of trails for the drills to get in off the access roads. So we have a pretty good network of trails there already from the drilling that we've done at Pristine and Big Vein, and so we would just take off from there. Down in the south, the trails would be probably a little bit more extensive that we would need to make. But there's no significant access issues in terms of like cliffs, mountains, rivers, things like that.
Okay. Switching focus a little bit to that Peter, Easton, and Knobby area, could these two be a part of the same structure?
It's too early to say. We've only just found Knobby. And we've been working at Peter Easton for a while, and there's a lot of anomalous gold geochemistry there, as you saw, but there's not a lot of outcrop still. So it's a matter of trying to piece together. It's like doing a jigsaw with half the pieces missing. So that's kind of where we're at Peter Easton and that area. We have done some drilling there. And we're waiting for the results of that initial drilling. So. And that'll certainly help us to focus in on where best to drill in future. But yeah, it's a good looking area. Knobby is again, it's just in terms of where it is, it adds a lot more potential to the area between Big Vein and Golden Glove.
Okay. A few more questions that we still have. So if any of you listening have more questions, please get them in now. But let's talk about Big Vein. Person is wondering, what depth does Big Vein start and how deep does mineralization go?
Well, it starts at surface. The initial discovery was the vein that we saw at surface. And in terms of our drilling, we have, I think, the deepest zone that we have at Big Vein is the Green Mantle zone, which is just in the footwall of the Appleton Fault, and that is about 400 meters vertical. So that's how far we've traced mineralization to date.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about Newfound Gold then. There's a couple questions here, and look, Newfound has been putting out, again, more impressive drill results. Can you give us any insights on if Newfound is still testing to the north of their project, which touches the southern part of your project?
No, not really. I haven't been out to Newfoundland myself in over a month, and I haven't heard of any drilling up to the north. I think I'm mostly just have the same information that everybody else does with the information that they put out in the news releases. And from that, it seems that they're focusing a lot on the Keats iceberg trend, and which makes sense because they've been getting incredible results out of it. But no, I have no idea whether they're going further north and closer to us. Certainly up in the area like Golden Glove and their occurrence just on the other side of the border, Big Dave. I don't think they're doing any work up around Big Dave, but I could be wrong.
Okay. One other question regarding Newfound Gold. They recently completed a seismic survey. Do you get any benefits from the seismic survey? And are you planning on doing a 3D seismic survey?
Well, we'll get the benefit. So there are two benefits we'll get. We'll get the benefit of everybody else when they actually publish the results, and perhaps have an image of what the Appleton Fault Zone is doing at depth, which would obviously help target their drilling, and I think they've alluded to that. And it may have some implications for us along the Appleton Fault up at Kingsway. The other benefit is that a portion of their survey extended onto our ground in the southeasternmost part of the project, and we will be getting results from the survey on that part of our project. So not sure what it'll tell us, but yeah, it's going to be exciting to see. It's not something that's commonly done in the mineral industry and mineral exploration, especially here in Canada. More common in the oil and gas exploration, of course. But as to us doing it, I think we would first see what comes out of their survey, and then decide whether that is something that we should try and take on ourselves.
Okay. Roger, this question, I know I've asked it to you before, but we seem to get it every webinar that we do. So do you intend to drill on the east side of the Appleton Fault, simply because that seems to be where Newfound Gold has a lot of their success?
Well, it's kind of interesting because our interpretation of the Appleton Fault Zone has changed quite a bit. And so I'm going to go back. Oh, you know what? I don't have it here. Okay, I'm just going to go back. I was going to show a map of Big Vein, but if you go through the map of Big Vein, the plan map of Big Vein in our previous presentation. Oh yeah, here, this might work. All right, so yeah, that's the Appleton Fault. So you can see that there's quite a bit of the stratigraphy at Big Vein that's on the east side of the Appleton Fault. And so we have done most of the work on the west, and that's where most of our mineralization is on the west side of the Appleton Fault. The two zones that are on the east side include the Green Mantle Zone, which is the deepest one. It's the about 400 meters. And at Big Vein Southwest, there is a mineralized zone. We call it Big Vein Southwest. That would also be on the east side of the Appleton Fault. We haven't really targeted the east side at Big Vein because it tends to require some deep drilling, and so we haven't really focused on that, especially since we've been getting some pretty good intersections on the west side anyway. So so the interpretation of the Appleton Fault, I think, has changed a little bit. And so from when we first started, and we assumed that it was further to the east of Big Vein. Now we believe that it actually runs, Big Vein is like right on it.
Okay. Well, 2 more questions, Roger, then I'll get you out of here. One, simply, drill results turnaround time. What are you expecting here? I think we've seen a faster return or turnaround time on drill results, but what are you expecting?
Right now, we're looking at the turnaround times of our drilling samples is on the order of 4 or 5 weeks. So it's not too bad. It's a lot better than it has been, and obviously that also depends on number of companies that are working, which seemed to have slowed off in Newfoundland because of various issues. So that does probably help speed up. And we use Easton in Newfoundland, and they actually when the turnaround time went sky high, they actually did quite a good job of getting more equipment in, getting more personnel in, and so yeah, it's about a month, 5 weeks right now.
Okay. Now, final question. I know we've gone over this, but just reiterate where the main areas of focus will be for those remaining meters in this program.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, the areas that we want to test are the gap and the area between Big Vein and Golden Glove. So that with I think it was 40 holes in the gap and 95 between Big Vein and Golden Glove, we're not going to do all those in the 17,000 meters that we have. So that alone would be enough to take us through to the end of the planned program. So I think I'll leave it there. I mean, we may, with Big Vein, like if we're drilling in the gap between Big Vein and Pristine, we're going to be extending Big Vein and extending Pristine. So in some ways, you could say we're drilling at Big Vein and Pristine still when we're drilling that gap. But it would be really nice if we could join those 2 occurrences together, which would give us something like about 2 kilometers strike length of gold mineralization. Okay.
Well, Roger, thank you very much for taking us through this presentation. I'm moving the presentation to the last slide where your contact information is. So if anybody has any follow-up questions for Roger, feel free to reach out to him. You can also email me directly, fleck@kereport.com. I'll follow up with Roger as we get some more news on the continuation of the drill program and to address any more questions that any of you send us. Everybody, thank you for tuning into this webinar. We hope you all found it helpful and valuable. And Roger, thank you for putting it together. Thank you for hosting.
Thanks very much, Corey. It was great to be here.